Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the August 9th regular meeting of Council. The City of Parksville recognizes the people of the Coast Salish Nations and their traditional territory upon which we gather with gratitude. First item we have tonight of business is the adoption of the minutes of the Council meeting held July the 17th. I need a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Salter, seconded by Councillor Patterson. Are there any errors or omissions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Thank you. That is carried. The next item we have is that the approval of tonight's agenda, that the August 9th, 2017 Council meeting agenda be approved. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Beale, seconded by Councillor Oates. Are there any errors or omissions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Thank you. That is carried. We have one delegation this evening, and it's from the Oceanside Health and Wellness Network. And we have a presentation by Sharon Welch, Brenda Kent. Anybody else? I see some familiar faces. Just you and Brenda, Sharon? All right. Make yourself at home. Come to the microphone, and we're delighted that you're here. Would you turn the microphone on? Just that's good. Speak into the microphone. Great.
Good evening, Your Worship, councillors and staff. It's a pleasure to be here today. My name is Brenda Kent, and I'm the coordinator of the Oceanside Health and Wellness Network. And I'm joined here today with Sharon Welch, who's the chair. From now on, I'll be referring to our network as OWN, OHWN, for the duration of our presentation. We also have a few members of our network in the gallery today. Mayor Lefebvre, I know that both you and Councillor Beale are quite familiar with OWN. Over the years you've been involved, and we just wanted to take the opportunity now to introduce OWN to all of Council and to share the highlights and priorities moving forward and to invite your participation. So what is involved in community health? Well, we know the health of the community is a complex combination of interconnected elements, and these include many things that the City of Parksville has grappled with over the years, from transportation to affordable housing to healthy built environments and physical activity and physical literacy. So some of these things the community has done a great job of moving forward, and there's still very much that we can do collectively. So our health is influenced by many diverse factors, and not everyone has equal access to health. These factors include what's up on your screen here: income, education level, gender, race, housing and homelessness, access to health care. All these factors are referred to as the social determinants of health. I'm sure many of you are already familiar with these factors. Many people believe that their health is shaped solely by the individual decisions that they make about, say, smoking or physical activity or diet, but really there are these broader factors in the community that affect an individual's ability to make those healthier choices for themselves and for their families. And this is what OWN is really focused on. The efforts that we focus on are these really core issues that at the end of the day are going to make a difference if we approach them properly at moving the dial on some of these very serious health issues. The opportunity for health begins in our communities. So in Parksville, we live in a beautiful place. People come from all over to be here in this wonderful community. We have a rich history of engaged citizens. And Oceanside and Parksville enjoy really good health. If you look at our health statistics, they're really quite good compared to British Columbia. But if you peel back the layers a bit and take a deeper dive into the health statistics of our region, there's a sub-story that really needs to come to the forefront. Dr. Hasselbeck, I know, comes to you on a regular basis throughout the year to let you know of different health priorities and issues that are coming to the forefront. And he was here last August. I stole a couple of his slides to talk about. And he highlighted some concerning trends. So one is that greater than 1/3 of the children under 6 in Oceanside live in poverty. A lot of people are very surprised by that statistic. It's quite hidden, but between 24% and 30% of children in this area are in poverty. And that's much higher than the BC average, and it's the 5th highest in all of Vancouver Island. We also know that there's an inequitable distribution of wealth in Oceanside. If you look at this graph, the larger proportion of those in low income are in the under 6 and families, young families, and then the higher proportion of higher income are in the older categories. And unfortunately, this gap is starting to grow. And when you have, have this income disparity in communities, it's linked to poorer health outcomes down the road. So it's something to keep an eye on. What else do we need to know? Well, 37% of our children in Oceanside are vulnerable in their development. And this is the recent early development instrument that we got the data back just a few months ago. And this, of course, is related to the poverty issue that we mentioned. We know that renters spend more than 30% of their income on housing. This is not unique to this area, of course. We see it all over British Columbia. And there's limited government funding of affordable housing in Oceanside. There's many people with mental health concerns who have to go to Nanaimo for services, and we're seeing, particularly in young adults, that we're losing them. They're moving off to larger centres where they can access the mental health services that they require. So I don't want to get lost into statistics, but to remember that even in a region as wealthy as ours, and wealthy in lots of different ways, there are serious challenges that make it difficult for everyone to achieve good health. So these are complex issues, and they require a coordinated approach to really address properly. And no one organization working on its own can move the dial on these very large and complex issues by themselves. So collective impact is an approach where everyone around the table continues to do what they do really well, but they just might shift their focus a bit to align with a commonly developed goal or some objectives towards an outcome. So if there's these isolated impact has these arrows everywhere, but a collective impact moves, all in the same direction. So if you imagine a group of people or organizations around a table that decide on some common outcomes and common goals to work towards together, the impact is that much greater. So Sharon, I'm going to turn it over to Sharon now, and she'll tell us how OWN plays a role in this work.
Thanks, Brenda. So in October of 2013, a group of stakeholders came together to discuss health and well-being in the Oceanside region. They decided to form a group that would invite the community to identify and address health-related issues together. So OWN is an emerging network of organizations and individuals working together to enhance community health and wellness in Oceanside. We focus on complex issues and take collective action to make the greatest impact. OWN came together at the right time to respond to a growing sense of urgency at the need to come together and make an impact on the health of our community. We have many organizations that have contributed to the making of OWN and are still part of OWN, and as you can see on the slide, there are lots of different groups involved. This demonstrates the strength of our group and also the potential of our network. So our new OWN structure includes a 12-person circle of partners, which acts as a steering committee. We also have action groups, which are all part of the broader network. Many of the organizations listed in that previous slide are sitting currently on our circle of partners or on action groups, and others are just part of the broader network. We've grown to 60 people, and we will continue to grow as we engage further with the community. Councillor Beale is sitting on our mental health action group right now, so we really appreciate her input. Our circle of partners includes community members, representative from FORA and the Perfect Storm Group, Oceanside Family Physician, Island Health, United Way, Regional District of Nanaimo, Aerosmith Health Care Society, SOS and the Oceanside Task Force on Homelessness, and Forward House Community Society. And 3 of our members on the Circle of Partners are also action group leads. Our funding comes through Island Health. They have provided funds for up to 3 years for a coordinator. And then we also received one-time seed funding of $15,000. The Regional District has been a super partner in administrating the funding that Island Health gave us. They've provided lots of in-kind support, and they host space on their website for OWN. So we completed a strategic plan early this year, and we identified 3 main priorities. The emerging trends combined with a depth of community knowledge led OWN to identify child wellness and mental health as the two main health priorities to address collectively, and also network development to ensure that we're firmly embedded in the community and we're building a strong and cohesive network. So for child wellness, we're looking at specifically increasing access to healthy, affordable foods in school and in the community. Children need sufficient access to healthy food to learn, grow, and thrive. OWN is concerned about child poverty in our region, which makes it difficult for families to access healthy and affordable food. OWN will focus on improving food security for school-age children and youth. In the mental health group, we're specifically seeking more coordinated supports for young adults living with mental health issues. A healthy community includes appropriate prevention services and support for people living with mental health issues and for people struggling with substance use. OWN recognizes that there are increasing demands on our limited community resources, and we're working to gather local statistics that accurately reflect the need in the community and will raise awareness and bring stakeholders together to take collective action. Our network development group is looking at OWN and saying, how can we stay intentional and strategic in our growth? And how can we stay grounded in the issues that truly matter to the community? Community-based health networks like OWN play an important role in addressing complex health issues through collective action. With this priority area, OWN will monitor and evaluate the structure of the network, develop and implement plans for community outreach and stakeholder engagement, and identify opportunities to ensure sustainability. Back to Brenda.
So please join us. We're growing right now. Our membership is growing, and we're reaching out to the community like never before. We have some upcoming opportunities to get involved and contribute to the growth of this network. First of all, we've got a network meeting and social that's coming up on September 21st. It's happening at the Aerosmith Lodge, and really it's going to be an opportunity just to do some networking, to share ideas, and start building relationships, or continue to build relationships. Secondly, we have two community forums that we're going to be able to host, one in the fall this year and one in the spring of next year. And that's because we received a community wellness grant from Island Health with our partners, the Regional District of Nanaimo. And so these community forums are going to allow us to intentionally engage with the community on a deeper level, to raise awareness and deepen our understanding, and to find out areas where we can act collectively on these really important priority health issues. So we do invite Parksville Council and staff to attend these events, to bring to the table what you already deeply know about your community health issues, to contribute to the dialogue, and to engage in collective action. We can send information on how to join OWN, and once you've joined, you can receive a monthly e-newsletter with periodic updates as well as invitations to events. So maybe we can get some feedback about how is best to do that, and how Council would like to receive updates from OWN over the period of time. So in summary, healthy communities have a complex balance of many elements, and it takes a community to work collectively to address these health issues, and that's really why we're here. OWN provides an opportunity for leadership, for dialogue, for shared planning, and for collective action. And we've got these great upcoming opportunities to get involved and to sink our teeth into this work and really engage the broader community at this point. So thank you very much. We'll wrap up our presentation now, and if there's any questions, please feel free.
Thank you very much for a very informative presentation. Members of Council, Councillor Powell.
Thank you, Worship. Thank you very much for your presentation. Excuse my ignorance, but so you talk about encouraging having child wellness and providing access to healthy, affordable food. How do you do that? What's the action on the ground? How does it work?
Okay, well, the first activity that the Child Wellness Action Group is going to be working on is working with schools. There's already some good work being done in schools with feeding children who need it, but it's a real patchwork. If you ask each school what they're doing, it's a real patchwork. So there's no consistency across the board. So we really want to engage with the schools that are providing food, with the organizations that are helping to provide food in schools, and seeing what we can do to make it across the board, that each child who really needs that food while they're in school can access it. A second action is really looking at the community organizations who, not in the schools, but in the community, that offer youth programming and youth supports, to see what kind of support they also provide with food.
Follow-up.
And the other one is the mental health and addictions and the prevention services and substance abuse. How does that connect? How is that being offered on the ground?
So we know that there are services available. Oceanside Mental Health has the clinical services. Forward House is out there doing day programs. We've got other organizations like the SOS that are doing pieces of the work. But we also know that for folks who have been diagnosed, especially young people, it's really important to get them engaged quickly with services and to make sure that there are local services that they can obtain so that they don't feel they have to move away to larger centers to get what they need. So this is really looking at the collective action piece to say, what are we doing already? How can we make sure we're all going in the same direction and that there aren't gaps in the services that are forcing people to leave?
So just to clarify, it's more like a coordinating service, like you're coordinating the service to make sure that clients are being served with the most appropriately, the fastest,
and
most
making
efficient
sure,
way possible?
yeah, making sure that we're all being strategic and moving in the same direction.
Okay, thank you.
Further members of council, Councillor Salter.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for your presentation. So are you working with any of the ministries with regard to this? Because, of course, that's generally who's delivering services to the folks you're helping.
Yeah, that's right. Our main health partner has been Island Health so far, so through them we've been linking in with the Ministry of Health. Of course, with our other action groups, there'll be connections in with MCFD and with Ministry of Education. So there will be more. This is sort of, we're starting out, but I think that there will be more very intentional connections in with different ministries, and this new Ministry of Mental Health and Addictions, which is provides some real opportunities for broader engagement in discussions on these issues.
Councillor Beale.
Thank you very much for your presentation, and just like to add, I think it's helpful for people to understand that this is not an organization that provides direct service, although organizations that are part of OWN certainly do. And I know at one point you mentioned that you'd like to be able to provide some communication or updates. Is there a time frame that's anticipated there? For instance, twice a year, 3 times a year, that we might receive some information to find out how the work is progressing?
Yeah, actually, that's a question for you, Councillor Beale. If you have any recommendations as to how frequently you would like to have some update from OWN. I mean, certainly if you're a member, you'll be receiving monthly newsletter with updates. However, Council, it would be nice to be able to come back and present, whether at a Council meeting or in some other fashion.
I guess there I'm thinking a little bit, I'm thinking about efficiency for OWN, and I know that everybody who's involved is very, very, very busy, and hopeful as it is a regional group. I'm thinking as well about the RDN and the town of Qualicum. So I think that it's helpful for us to get some information, because some people have a fair bit of information, other people's are not as connected. So I think it would be nice to have something that works for you, but understanding that it would be appreciated to have something come to council periodically. But I would hope that it could be something that would go to the RDN at the same time, come to the town of Qualicum. So I wouldn't like to prescribe, we'd like to have something so many times a year. But I'm sure that we would welcome a summary of of how things are going from time to time.
Right. And we'd be delighted to do that. So, if we look at maybe twice a year updates, or if there's urgent issues that come up that we, feel the need to inform council of, in between that, we certainly would flag that.
Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you for coming forward. You have so many different organizations that are a part of this group. How do you meet? How do you, or do you meet specifically?
We do, yeah. We're up until fairly recently, all of our Oceanside Health and Wellness Network has really been what we call our circle of partners, which has been that main steering committee, and that was about 25 people up until quite recently. And then we changed the structure. We now have a steering committee of 12, and this broader group is now what we're calling our network, and that will continue to grow. So our circle of partners meets every month. And the broader network is going to meet, I think, quarterly. We're still working out some of these details, but we do have our first sort of official network meeting on September 21st.
And our action groups meet monthly as well.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay, I've got some second questions from Councillor Oates. Do you have anything first? Councillor Powell and then Councillor Salter.
Thank you, Your Worship. And so I'm glad that you brought up that we have a new ministry for mental health and addictions, and we do have the UBCM coming up in September. I was really struck by the report of the child poverty in this area, and I'm wondering if we couldn't, with the regional district and Qualicum Beach, put something together and meet with the minister at the UBCM. I think it's brand new. I think we should get in there while it's brand new and get our ask in there, and so maybe we can meet with you before then and develop something to go. But I would like to make a motion at this time that we attend to request a meeting with Minister Judy Darcy to present, if we're allowed to, this report, including the child poverty information and the mental health and addictions, because I think that's sorely lacking in this community. I worked for the Ministry for Children and Families for a number of years, and I know that that group of people is not served well in this community. And so I think that this new ministry, we should actually have something to go to Judy Darcy with. So if you're all right with that, if I could make that motion to present pieces of this report and to maybe have a meeting with you prior to that to make sure we're all on the same page and we understand what our ask is. So
Yeah, I think that sounds like a really good opportunity.
So maybe it's too early to do a motion yet. Is it too
No, I don't
early?
think it is. No. Mrs. Gomez?
No, Your Worship, through to Councillor Powell, it's not too early because it opened last week to make appointments,
Okay,
and the
okay.
deadline for providing briefing notes is August 19th.
Okay, so we can get that done then.
Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Beale, any discussion on the motion? I'd just like to make a comment. You said 1/3 of children under 6 live in poverty in Oceanside. What's that represent as in terms of a number, an actual arithmetic number? 10, 15, 20, 60, 80, 100?
I will have to get back to you on that,
Okay.
Your Worship.
Okay. And I would also ask you, as a follow-up to Councillor Powell's motion, the more pages, the less. We don't have much time with ministers. We're given maybe 5, 10, 15 minutes at the most. So if you could make the report as concise as possible, it would be appreciated.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions on the motion? Seeing none, I'm going to call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you. That is carried. Thank you. Any other questions for the delegation? Councillor Salter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to clarify. So am I correct that you are really an umbrella organization for all of the other service providers that you listed? Is that what you're saying? You're an umbrella for them?
We're not an organization. We're a network. We're a network that is facilitating this collective engagement. So I'm the only paid staff, and then everybody else are representatives from different organizations or individual community members that are part of the network. So really our organization is just a network that's providing that opportunity to come together, to have these dialogues, and OWN acts as what they might call a backbone organization to provide that support to kind of keep people thinking forward and moving forward and planning together. I don't know if that helps answer your question. Okay.
I have a comment and then two questions. My comment springs from a meeting. I went to the Springwood Elementary School back in early June to thank everybody for cleaning up or participating in Beach Cleanup Day. I believe it was grade 1. I'm not sure. It's either grade 1 or no higher than grade 2. A young boy got up and the teacher said, "This is the mayor," and I came to thank people for the work that they had done. And he said to me, "Mr. Mayor, my mother and I are poor and we have to use the food bank." And I've got to tell you, as the mayor, that's the last thing I thought I'd hear in an elementary school. And later on that day, I had grade 6 or grade 7 students talking about the lack of affordable rental housing. So I came away from that experience comparing it to my experience, which is many, many, many years ago. And, you know, when I was in grade 1 or grade 2, or I was in grade 6 or grade 7, the last thing on my mind was affordable rental accommodation. So we've come to that point where the kids themselves know about it, understand it, and can talk very articulately about it. When OWN was in its embryonic stages, one of the complaints that I had at the time, was that Island Health wasn't listening. Island Health was telling us what to do. And we found that a really tough barrier to break through. Island Health was telling us what was good for us. So are you gaining more and more success in feeding upward to Island Health, saying this is what we need in the Oceanside area? And that's my first question.
Absolutely. On our circle of partners, we have 2 Island Health representatives and the rest are community representatives, so 10 community representatives. And as I said, the priorities were determined through a strategic planning process, which Island Health was a part of, but it was absolutely directed from the community organizations and individuals.
The other question I have is, I sit on the Perfect Storm Committee, which is looking at doctor shortages. And one of the things that I found out as a result of being on that committee is that nurse practitioners can do 70% of the work of a doctor. And realistically speaking, we're having a tough time recruiting doctors. So one of the things that we're going to be doing when we go to meet with the Minister of Health at UBCM, myself and the Mayor of Qualicum Beach, we're going to be presenting a program or a proposal to the Minister of Health that we should find a way to fund nurse practitioners, because they can't be funded under the present system. So when you can get 3 or 4 available nurse practitioners, maybe 5, that can work in the Oceanside area, that can do 70% of the work of a doctor, that's worthwhile, because hiring new doctors is going to be a difficult road to hoe. I don't know if you have any comments about that, but if you do, I'd like to hear them.
Hopefully we can find people who have specific training in mental health, because an understanding of mental health in the healthcare system is extremely important, and many people face barriers because they have to go through a system that has not historically been overly sensitive to those who are not perceived as the normal citizen. And our folks with mental health, with the right supports, can live healthy, happy lives and can be extremely great contributing members of our society. And so we need to get them the support that they need so that they can give back.
Thank you. Members of Council, any further questions? Thank you very much for coming. Thank you very much for the information. We'll look forward to hearing more from you. Thank you.
Very much.
Our first report this evening is consideration of a development permit for an industrial facility at 1023 Herring Gull Way. I need a mover and a seconder for the recommendations. Moved by Councillor Powell, seconded by Councillor Beale. I should point out, I want to introduce Ms. Kaur. Am I pronouncing your name correctly?
It's very close. It's Cower.
Cower? Oh, okay, Cower. Somebody told me it was. That's all right. I'll deal with that person later. So this is your first council meeting.
Yes.
Welcome. You've been with the city now for how many months?
3 months.
3 months. Welcome.
Thank you.
And we're looking forward to your report on this particular project. Sitting in for Mr. Russell, who is not well.
That's right.
Go ahead. Welcome.
Thank you. So For council consideration is the issuance of a development permit for an application that's intended to facilitate the construction of 2 industrial buildings and associated parking and landscaping on the 0.430 hectare subject property at 1023 Gull Way. The subject property is located within the industrial park, development permit areas number 6, and groundwater protection development permit area number 16. Further detail and analysis is provided in the staff report, and the recommendation is as per the report.
Thank you. Any questions for Councillor Oates?
I'll move the recommendations.
Moved and seconded. Okay, so any questions for, how to pronounce that for me again?
Cower?
Cower, okay. Councillor Salter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you, I'm wondering what the use of this building, what exactly are they going to be delivering? What's the service they're trying to deliver here in this building? I didn't see anything when I read it.
At this point, it's one of the buildings is warehouse and office space, and the other has multiple tenant spaces that don't have a specific use at this time.
What does that mean?
It means that, well, there's no businesses that have rented the space to work in the building yet. Whatever uses go into that building will have to be consistent with the zoning. Because it's an industrial zoning, but at this point there isn't a specified use.
And is this the same area where Wildflower was going to build?
I'm not aware of that. Does anybody else?
No?
I don't think it is. Wildflower's gone.
I know that.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, through you to Councillor Salter, it is the same industrial area, but not the same property.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to call all 3 recommendations, and may I do that, Mrs. Comas? So all those in favor of the 3 recommendations? Opposed? Thank you, that is carried. Okay, that wasn't too bad, was it, Ms. Cowan?
No, thank you.
Okay. Watch out for the next time, though. We'll give you a bye. All right, Mrs. Comas, we have an update on the totem pole. We have 3 recommendations. I need a mover and a seconder. Councillor Salter, Councillor Beal. So, Mrs. Comas, would you please give us the background on the update on the totem pole project that once stood in front of the Visitor Information Centre?
Yes, Your Worship. The project is continuing. As Council will notice, the totem pole is no longer in front of the Chamber of Commerce, and it has been moved to the fire training ground where it is undergoing pest eradication. We have become aware that we require insurance to insure the artist while he is working on an independent property, and a rental agreement for that property, and a artist commission agreement with the artist. And the purpose of this report is to obtain Council's authority to enter into those agreements, which are attached to the report. The recommendations are as contained in the report.
Any questions for Mrs. Comas? Fairly straightforward. No questions? I'm going to call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you. That is carried. Tonight, in terms of bylaws, we have 1 bylaw for 3rd reading this evening. It's the Zoning and Development Amendment Bylaw 2016, number 2000.104. I need a mover and a seconder for the recommendation. Moved by Councillor Beal, seconded by Councillor Powell. Any discussion? Councillor Oates.
Yes, Your Worship. Thank you. Since this is the one where we had the presentation a few weeks ago, and people came out, and subsequent to that, we've been receiving, or I personally have been receiving, a lot of correspondence from a lot of people about their resistance to this particular project.
I see, Mrs. Comas. I think there was a time after the public hearing.
Yeah, the public hearing has been terminated, and so Council is not permitted to receive additional information following the termination of the public hearing.
Are you talking about the correspondence you would have received prior to the public hearing? No, you still can't tell me.
Once the public hearing has been terminated, Council is not permitted to
whether
receive
it came
any,
before. Okay. Okay. Okay, anything else? Councillor Salter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, prior to the meeting, I also received a lot of mail from the community. People aren't happy about it.
It's
Your Worship, the
null and void.
public hearing is terminated. Council cannot discuss this.
Well, then
after
why
the
is it
public
here? I mean, why are we voting on it? It's a
Well,
done deal, isn't it? then?
it's for
Yeah.
approval or
No,
disapproval.
if council wishes to defeat the bylaw, they can. At the last council meeting, there was a report, there was a follow-up from the public hearing, and council amended the bylaw to restrict the development to 20 units.
Yeah.
So that's been done. So now it's time for council to, unless you are going to raise a matter that was raised at the public hearing and adopt a motion or amend the bylaw, then it's time for council to vote and either forward it on or defeat it.
That's what we're doing. Okay?
Well, I would like to say something, and that is that, I mean, it's not just in Parksville, it's throughout BC. You know, we're on a trajectory where it's continuous construction. And I understand the need for the tax dollars and the money that is received through the developers. So I understand that need, but I also recognize that the community this is not what the community this is what they want, and it's not what they asked for in their OCPs. So I also understand that we amend the OCPs at every opportunity because we have to meet the RGS. But at some point, it seems to me, especially as elected officials, we kind of need to start looking at what the community are asking us to do on their behalf, even though I understand the RGS and our backs are against the wall because of it. So it's a very difficult position that we're in. You know, dropping down to 20 units was probably the best we were going to get because this is going to go ahead anyways. So I guess I just need to say that because I think you know, maybe the community don't realize that really we have to follow the provincial growth strategy, and this is it.
People don't like high taxes either, but that's another discussion. Okay. Any other comments? I'm going to call the vote. All those in favor of the recommendation? Opposed? Okay, that recommendation passes. There was two in opposition. You know who we got those names? We're okay? Okay. Okay, we've come to the point of new business. Does any member of council have any new business? I'm going to start on my left. Councillor Patterson. Councillor Oates.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. A couple of things. I want to just say what an honor it was to be invited and what a privilege to attend the Tribal Journeys in the News there a few days ago. It was quite the event. It was brought together people from all over the island, all over the coastal communities from the United States. And it was quite a privilege to be there, and I just wanted to put it on the record that I appreciated the invitation, was glad that I could attend. The other has to do with a question that I received actually earlier today about the development up there on Westhurst Avenue on Wren's Road there. There's a new, I don't know whether it's a house or an apartment building, or does anybody know what that is?
About the large complex? 3-car garage? I heard about it. Somebody mentioned it to me yesterday or today, I forget. And I haven't had a chance to talk to staff yet about it. It's on Wren's Road?
Yeah, it's on Hurst right at the end, just before it turns into Wren's. Isn't that something we can I can follow up with me at a later time.
I think I know where it is. And I don't. Yeah, I think I know where it is. I've had a look at it. It's a big house. Okay, anything else, Councillor Oates? Councillor Powell? No? Sorry, Councillor Oates? Okay. Councillor Beale?
Yes, thank you, Worship. A couple of things. I just want to mention that the library summer reading program is wrapping up very soon, and next Wednesday they will have their celebration, and I don't have stats as to how many were involved, but I'm sure there was a good turnout, and it's always so exciting to see all those kids who've been busy reading, and of course there are adults as well, but the magic show I think isn't particularly aimed at the adults. I do have another item. I do have a motion I'd like to bring forward, and I also have some photos that to go along with this. If you could share a little bit. I've got one for Mr. Figuera as well. And this is a follow-up to some of the concerns that were raised about the issues, safety issues for pedestrians and others on Stamford Avenue. And so my motion is as follows. I would request that staff look at the feasibility of extending the no parking zone along the south side of Stamford Avenue from Blower Road, where there is already a no parking area in place, to continue that eastward to Shelley Road. That's my motion, and I think that picture indicates quite graphically why I would like to bring this forward at this time.
We have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Oates. Okay, discussion on the motion.
Okay, could I start? Yes, I'm certainly familiar with Stamford, but I was taking another look at it following some information that came to council a little while back, and particularly with not only with the construction that's going on, but all the parking along the side of the road. There is literally no room for a pedestrian who needs to be on that side of the road to walk anywhere other than actually in the roadway. Now, I did meet with Mr. Figuera about this briefly and looked at it. It may be possible that staff would come back and this might be something temporary, but given that the plans for this road to improve the infrastructure for both vehicles, pedestrians, and cyclists is not slated to be complete until 2020 or 2021, I think that's a long time to wait before we do anything to improve the situation. Now, I did put in my request is that we look at limiting the parking on that end on the south side, as the north side does have some sidewalk. It is not continuous. On the south side, there is also a wider shoulder in place, which does presently allow vehicles that are parked there to be farther off the road and still allow a wider laneway. So I think that, because I do understand that businesses up there, people are parked there. It's also can be helpful to have vehicles actually parked on a road. Visually, it helps slow down traffic a little bit. If you clear the whole road, then you get some of what we get on Hearst in places where it's a bit of a speedway. So I would just like to see this council do something that would potentially, help the situation in the interim until we have all that infrastructure in place. And again, I'm asking that staff look at the situation and come back to us and hopefully in a timely manner, because I think it is quite a critical situation at this place. By the way, I will say, and for those in the audience, the photo shows an elderly man with a cane who's forced to walk in the roadway. I did not know this man. I just went down there thinking, I'm just going to have a look at it, and there he was. So it was quite fortuitous, but people do walk on that road, and it seems quite dangerous.
Any members of council have any other comments? Councillor Oates.
Yeah, thank you, Worship. I'm going to speak against the motion. I certainly agree that parking is an issue. I think parking is a big issue in this city, but I think we need to have a more coordinated approach with respect to our parking plan and not being piecemeal about it. Just as the Oceanside Health and Wellness Network makes a lot of sense to bring to coordinate all the organizations together so that the resources are more, you get more utility out of them. I think it's important that if we're going to be addressing parking concerns on Stanford Avenue, I think we need to be looking at it more globally for the entire city, and to just say, well, we're just put in a no parking zone here while those folks are just going to move somewhere else, and then next week we'll be looking at another no parking zone somewhere else. It's unfortunate that it is the way it is, but to me that's almost micromanaging what should be something that is captured in a more universal traffic plan. So if we I'm not going to dispute that it might be a safety concern, but I think that the safety concern that you alleviate there, you may create somewhere else. So I couldn't support just simply creating no parking zones when not knowing where those cars could go, what the impact that could be on what we're doing. It's like a balloon. You push in here, it pops out somewhere else. So I certainly support the notion that we need to look at parking. I think it's a source of untapped revenue in this city. Certainly businesses down adjacent to our community park, or community members down adjacent to the community park have certainly clued into it. I noticed they're now charging parking down there. I guess that's because parking is such a premium at the park. I guess doing something like this is an increased premium for parking, but I can't support it because it's too piecemeal.
Councillor Salter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I have two things. One, when I look at the traffic, the vehicles that are parked here, I suspect that many of them are employees who are working on that building across the street. So that's where they're parking here. I see a work, looks like a work van. So you drag your tools over, etc. So part of it is, yeah, where would they put their vehicles when they're going to go to work? There is a lot of parking for the businesses on Stanford, though. I mean, there's huge areas for parking. If you're going into whatever, the carpet shop or the beer store or whatever it is you're doing up there. So there is parking in front of those buildings in those plazas. But the parking on the street, it is a problem. And so I want to clarify, are you saying, not in fact that there won't be any parking, but that you want staff to take a look at what options can we come up with to help clear this area here, which is clearly dangerous when people are walking down the road? Is that what you're asking?
Yes, and perhaps the wording is not the best, because the issue is it's really around safety. And if there was a longer, for instance, if there was less parking on that one side, there is in fact quite a lot of space on the other side of the road that is not presently used because people, park as close as they can to where they're going, right? But pardon me? Yeah, but perhaps I'm wondering if an amendment, and I would like to pick up on something that Councillor Oates brought up, because like you, Councillor Oates, I was concerned that this would be rather piecemeal and almost operational, but I was informed that that in fact a concern such as an issue of parking in a particular area is something that council needed to bring forward, and I'll be honest, I was a little bit surprised. I thought that this might come from staff in one fashion or another. Perhaps if it could be looked at, just because the purpose is to improve the safety for at that end of the street, and I say at that end of the street because that is where the congestion is. Ahead of that area, it's already a no parking zone, so that was where that came from. And there is quite a bit of space on the other side of the road a little farther down, although people who park there would then have to walk a couple of minutes farther in order to get to where they're going.
Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Your Worship. It seems Councillor Bylaw and I were on the same page a little bit, because I had a vehicle that had some work done in the in that area, and I took a walk on that yesterday. So I walked down, and then I came back, and then I walked in the area, and traffic is definitely an issue, I would assume, and that a great deal of it is employees of the different businesses and everything in that area. I'm going to support the motion and everything. I'm going to ask our Director Vaughn if this would require a traffic type study. If
Mr. Figueroa?
Mr. Figueroa?
If I may, Your Worship, through to Councillor Patterson. I think it's definitely along those lines. It's a more of significant impact. I think you're right. I think a lot of the cars that are parking, there's a fair number of them on the south side of Stanford, are probably related to the businesses along there. It would definitely be a transportation report would definitely, I think, be needed to try to understand, as Councillor Oates is saying, what is the impact of stripping parking for. There's a significant number of cars that do park on the south side, so where are they going to go? It's not a. I don't think it's a simple issue, and it really would have to be looked into if we were serious about stripping that parking all the way down from Blower all the way down to Shelley.
My comments are, my first questions that come to mind is that when I look at where they are and I look at the picture, it's obviously the building is right across the street, so that's what the construction workers are. That's where they're parking. And you've got ladders on tops of trucks and that sort of thing. So that's one issue, and it probably temporary. When the project is eliminated, there shouldn't be any parking, or we could maybe wait for that. But the other thing is that what happens from an enforcement point of view, if they don't want to walk 30, 40 meters, then you're going to have bylaw officers down there all the time issuing tickets, and then the whole thing gets into a big mishmash. Mr. Figueroa, when we did when we provided the statistics that we're going to do the redo Stanford in 2021, what does that look like in 2021? Is there going to be bicycle lanes on both sides? There will be no parking?
If I may, Your Worship, this is identified as a collector road. We will try to accommodate parking where it makes sense, but there will be bike lanes and there will be sidewalks both sides.
I'm going to go to Councillor Powell, and then we'll come back to Councillor Beale.
Thank you, Your Worship. And so the person, the proponent who is building that, who's responsible for that, is the car dealership, right? So isn't there a way for him to provide parking for his employees? Or is it contracted? Or because there seems that's what's created the problem, it sounds like. And so aren't they responsible to provide parking for their employees?
If I may, Your Worship, through to Councillor Powell. In my opinion, a lot of the parking, there's certainly the potential for some of these cars being related to the construction. But despite the construction, there normally is a fair number of cars parked on the south side. Certainly, I couldn't tell you how many of these are related to construction, but there's certainly going to be some of them. But I think the majority are not. The majority are cars that would normally be parking on the south side related to the businesses.
Councillor.
Thank you, Your Worship. As a further follow-up, I did not print out the photos that show the other side of the street. What we tend to have down there is a concentrated cluster on both sides of the road. That has been true prior to that construction taking place as well. However, on the other side of the road, and still along where there is a vacant lot, there are actually two vacant lots coming up towards Mill Street and McVickers and so on. And all the way back to where the Canadian Food or Fisheries, I forget exactly, that building is. If you take photos at the same time, which is not very far, that area doesn't have very many cars parked. So it's not that there is no room on the other side. I also would anticipate that should this motion go forward and staff has a chance to look at it, this would also provide an opportunity for some communication with the business owners there to find out. Please note that I asked if it would be feasible to look at this, and I do anticipate that this might well be a temporary measure until such time as the infrastructure is solidly in place. At present on Stamford, which I think all of us know is a very busy collector road, a very, very highly used and a very helpful route across town. And presently there are long sections on the south side that have no parking, and this cluster does happen beyond that. So for all of those reasons, that is why I was wanting to ask that staff have a look at that possibility.
Any further questions before I call the vote? Councillor Salter.
Sorry, I don't want to prolong this, but you just mentioned a temporary measure, so I'm a little confused because I thought what we were looking at was having staff look into this, review it, and come back to us and say, okay, well, this is what we've come up with. So when you say temporary measure, what are you talking about there?
My sorry, follow up, but Stamford is one of the roads that's up for being improved as of 2021. So at that point in time, what it looks like may be a little different than now. So that's all I mean. I am open certainly to the possibility that staff may say this would be temporary, but in the interim. So.
Okay. Any further comments? Councillor Oates.
Yes, Your Worship. I'm having a hard time understanding how we're going to task staff with something that could be a possible temporary measure when we've tasked staff with a list of, under to-do list, some of them have items there that are not expected to be done for another year, another 18 months. And some of them are related to this type of issue. Traffic calming, parking, it's all variations on a theme. And to send staff off on this, so if we pass this motion tonight, is this the top priority for staff? That they go do that and all these other things, all these other motions we passed? Like the motion that I advocated for looking into the feasibility of paid parking, that now gets pushed back a little further. Is that the intent? The motion to have a student youth liaison here, that work gets pushed back so that we look at a possibility of perhaps putting in a no parking zone because it might be a temporary problem, or it might be a permanent problem, or it might be just the symptom of a growing city, in which case it would behoove us to do something that's more universal as opposed to a one-off piece. So if this is going to trump any of those other projects or any of these other things that we've asked staff to do, for that reason alone we should defeat it and give them a chance to catch up with it. I can't support this. I do support that there is a concern, but I'm not sure that it's the most urgent concern that we have to deal with tonight. And to say to staff, redirect your focus onto something else now, and then expect we come back as a council and expect results. Well, you're sending them in a bunch of different directions. I allude to the slide that was up there earlier with all the different arrows going all over the place. That's what this motion would add to. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to call the vote unless anybody has an urgent need to make another comment. All those in favor of the motion? Opposed? That motion carries. Okay. You got a timeline? Mr. Figueroa, have you got a timeline? How are you going to? You're going to have to find out who's parking there. I don't know. I mean, yes, Councillor Oates.
That's a very fair question, Your Worship. We've now passed a motion, and one of the topics that's been near and dear to our hearts recently is prioritizing. So Are we I think that we should now direct staff as to where you see that as a priority item for them. I think that would be a fair thing to do so that they don't have to decide where it fits in. So I think it should be fair to say that this is something that you want done and want it done by a certain date, and all these other things get put aside.
You got a date you can live with? You made the motion.
I don't have a specific date, but for me, this is quite a high priority, and I understand that there are many other things that are very important to be done. However, we have a situation where we have a very busy collector road, probably as, you know, it's second to 19A, and we are forcing people to walk in the road.
You've made your point. Let's talk dates. So, what's an acceptable, minimum acceptable date to you?
That's where. Time's up. There. That's where actually I was hoping to get some advice from Mr. Figuera. I did not want to put down a specific date, but I was hoping.
Your Worship, if we could have a staff input.
Yeah.
Mrs. Coleman.
Could we have staff input? Thanks.
Yes, Your Worship. As Council knows, we've been trying to arrange a meeting to discuss the items on our tabled and referred matters. We have about 30 at least items that we have in the hopper that we were hoping Council would give us some direction on prioritization with respect to that. Would it be possible for us to include this report, this recommendation, in that list, come back to Council when we have our prioritization meeting so that we can consider it along with all of the other things that Council has asked for?
You okay with that, Councillor Beale? Okay, we'll do that. Thank you. So we should try to have that meeting later on this month, if that's possible.
Well, the last
because I think everybody will be here at that time.
The last date that was suggested was September 13th or 14th, and we hadn't received a response to that. So
can you send that out again tomorrow?
Yeah, we can send that out again.
Let's get that on the road. Okay, thank you. Councillor Salter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to speak to that as well. So will council have the opportunity to look at that list, though, prior to attending the meeting and then trying
That's
to
the
bash
purpose
out?
of the list. That's
Okay.
the purpose of the list, to set priorities.
So we'll look at it first, and then we'll have the meeting. And
yeah, it has been circulated to Council. We can recirculate it again if you like.
And that might not be a bad idea. I know I've got my copy. I've been going over it, but if everybody should be refreshed and get another copy. Okay, anything else under new business? Councillor Salter. You finished, Councillor? Councillor Beale? Okay, Councillor Salter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I just, a couple things. One is I attended the community garden barbecue. That was in July, end of July. And there were 17 people that attended the barbecue. And I actually thought it was mostly seniors that were doing gardens. But I was wrong. There's a lot of young families that also have a plot in there and that are growing. So there was someone with a 6-month-old child, someone with a 2-year-old. They were all in there. So there's a lot of folks in our community that don't have anywhere to grow a garden but there. And they were talking about that with me. They're all really quite proud of the gardens. And I had a really great view of actually all of them. I was even eating out of them, but anyhow, it was great, and it was a potluck, and that was really good too. So I kind of lingered, but anyway, so it was really nice, and it was nice to see how proud they are of what they've done. They've done a really good job. One thing that Peter did send out is that they've got an insect hotel. And a butterfly garden, and the insects, insects are really good for gardens, and so that's what they're doing. Is they're attracting, the ladybugs and the good bugs. And the other thing that I wanted to mention was at the museum Connie Kuramoto does, she's a master gardener and a horticulturalist and so on, and so she's doing the Master Gardener's course in September for anyone who wants to attend. Actually, I'm going to take that course myself. And she also offers like short courses on Friday, every second Friday. It's every second or third Friday at the museum on things like winter planting or fruits and looking after your fruits and vegetables or fruits and berries and so different really good courses. And I actually have been taking those courses too. So I just want to say it's very busy down there with the market on the Fridays because she's doing this on the Friday. She starts at 6 o'clock, and you can just go in and take the course. You don't have to, you don't have to get into a lineup or anything. But the Master Gardener course in September is going to be, I think, really good and quite valuable. So that's it.
I just have two brief items. On July the 26th, I was invited by the Legion to attend a ceremony for Mr. Archie Bertram on his 97th birthday. He was awarded the Legion of let me read my notes again. Oh yes, he was awarded the National Order of the Legion of Honor, given to those who helped liberate France in the Second World War, and now this made him a Knight of France. It was quite impressive, and what I said to Mr. Bertram when I congratulated him on this award, I thanked him because for those of you that were born in my generation, in our generation, I'm looking at you, Councillor Beale, and others, you too, Councillor Salter. But I said that you made our lives really peaceful because we grew up in the late 40s, the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, unlike today when all hell seems to be breaking loose. So it was quite an emotional ceremony for him, and it was very moving. His sons were there, and his wife was there. It was quite an honor for the man, and we were lucky to have this kind of a gentleman living in our midst. Today, this afternoon, I attended at the Rotary Park in Qualicum Beach a ceremony to recognize the emergency services volunteers. Councillor Oates was there with me. We handed out pins for 5 years, 10, 15, 20, and 25-year service, which was awesome. These folks do a great job. And I cited in my remarks that when we had the fire at the Oceanside Terrace, this group came together under the auspices of our emergency services coordinator, Mr. Aaron Roger, and it was a wonderfully handled. I presented myself to the headquarters 2 days later, and almost everyone had been placed, and they were actively looking for other places for folks. So it was quite a situation for us to have these types of volunteers in our midst. And I did mention also that the Canada Day Parade that now sees participants and attendees in the thousands. I think the attendees are probably over 7,000. Without the emergency services folk that work for the ham radio operators, we wouldn't be able to do it. The communication is instantaneous. We have roughly 10 volunteers and 10 different golf carts all over the route, so we get instant communication if something has gone wrong, and this is invaluable. And it's invaluable for our firefighters and our ambulance operators, so I just wanted to mention that. So that's it for today. Now we're moving into special business. I need a mover and a seconder. Councillor Salter, seconded by Councillor Patterson, to pursuant to Section 91C and 1 of the Community Charter. Council proceed to a closed meeting to consider items related to labor and the receipt of advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege. So we'll take 5 minutes and then we'll move into the camera. Councillor Beale.